All right, if you're an infielder, whether you're baseball or softball, I highly, highly recommend you guys listen into this. I've got Julius Gaines, who is the founder of Ground Up Baseball, former college and pro shortstop, and is one of the top infield developers in the country. Julius was one of the top baseball recruits in the country when he was in high school. Ended up with a scholarship to Florida International University, and he obviously had a lot of success there. Ended up briefly in the Mariners organization, but one thing I love about Julius is just how he mentors, how he coaches his clients. Like you can see it even just through his content. I've never met him in person, but I can see the impact he has on his athletes. So if you're an infielder, I highly recommend you tune in on this because there's going to be some good stuff. So Julius, thanks for joining.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I want to start off with the brand. You call it ground up baseball.
hmm
Why is it ground up baseball? What's the importance of that for infielders?
Um, Honestly, how I came up with the name was kind of interesting. Like I just kept saying it. Like in my sessions, I was, you got to work from the ground up. You gotta be below the ball, and I was like, you know what, like that actually might be a good name, but it kind of ties into, what I believe about, building a foundation. Every foundation, building wise is built from the ground. It's like you can't start with the frame, you can't start with the drywall. You got to start with, that cement slab. The I always like to say the part that's not sexy. But if you have a good foundation, you can build everything else on it. So it's kind of a little bit of a double entendre. But yeah, it actually came from me telling my kids to work from the ground up.
Okay, okay. So what do you see then with a lot of infielders? What are the common mistakes where they're maybe not working from the ground up, or some of those common things you see that lead to you having to
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah, how they get low or what they feel like getting low is. You have a lot of kids that'll only bend at their waist and their legs are almost locked out, their hands are deep. I would say in terms of getting low, that's probably one of the most common ones, like just not knowing, how to have your butt back. You do hinge at the waist, but it's not all there.
Okay, okay. What about, so you talk again about ground up, about that foundation, building that foundation, and I know one thing that I see a lot in content. I follow A Rod as much as a Mariners fan. We have this love hate
hmm
relationship with him. Uh, I follow him and I really like his content, and he does talk about the fundamentals, and I see some other pro athletes like emphasizing that. Like, why is it so important for athletes to really understand the fundamentals when it comes to infielding?
Because fundamentals give you a foundation to be consistent. It's really tough to be consistent and to repeat something if you don't have those foundations. Let alone building on it to reach more complex things, to reach a higher level, to be able to keep up with the pace of the game. So, you know, it could get monotonous because you got to repeat it so much and you got to build it and you got to work to keep it. But it's everything, especially in a sport like baseball, because it's not going away. The game doesn't change. It's certain variables that do, but you got to catch it, you got to throw it, and you got to keep doing it. So its fundamentals are huge.
Yeah. So what, like, I just think about with pro athletes though, like I think some athletes, some younger athletes would think, oh well, like once you do it long enough, then it's just like kind of ingrained in you though. Like why isn't it? I mean, especially with how you've played at a high level and you've probably been
Yeah.
around plenty of who played at a high level. Why is that not the case?
Honestly, it does get a little easier, but you still have to be intentional because I always tell my kids bad habits take no effort to create, and they're hard as all get out to break. Good habits are really hard to create, really easy to break. So you always have to stay on top of though, and everybody's different. Everybody has certain areas that they have to spend more time on than others. But whatever that area may be, you have to continue to be intentional with whatever it is you're doing because if you're not, you'll find yourself in a space to where it's like, how did I get here? When did this become a problem? And it is those bad habits creep in. It's like, if you're out in the ocean and you're not doing anything, you're gonna get pulled out. versus, okay, I actually have to work to stay close to short. So it's kind of like that same concept. Like if you're not intentional, if you're not doing anything, you'll start to drift away, and you'll find yourself in a spot that you really don't want to be in.
Yeah, yeah. No, that I mean that makes sense. It's it's just like I with my athletes, I'm regularly talking to them about sleep, and it's so easy for us like to fall into bad
Hmm.
habits when it comes to sleep.
Oh yeah,
Screens and whatnot. Like
I
we'll
can
be good
attest to
for a
that one.
while. We'll be good for a while, and then like we go back to just
Yeah.
ways. It's yeah.
Hmm.
Or driving, getting angry with driving, like you might be good for a
Yep.
while and suddenly something triggers.
Yep.
Um, what about one thing that I feel like a lot of fielders, when I'm watching, especially like middle school, high schoolers, is they really struggle with timing when the ball is coming their way. Like, how do you coach that? Like, what are some things that players can like work on to better understand timing and especially when the ball is bouncing?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. Like from the beginning, you talk about, your prep step. Some people call it hop step, but how are you getting ready for the ball? Are you flat footed? Is your first step delayed? So that plays a huge role into just the beginning of it. But let's say you do get a good first step, understanding what you're looking for in terms of like, okay, I have three main types of hops. Do I know what they are? Then once I know those hops, do I can I read trajectory? Can I guess or estimate where the next hop is going to happen? And how do I create what I want? Can I create a long hop here? Can I create a short hop? What do I do if I know I'm going to get a middle hop? So it's honestly a wide range of things that can affect your timing. But I would say one of the ground level things are your hop step, and then understanding what the three hops are: short hop, middle hop, long hop.
Okay. Can you unpack those? Because we also have some middle schoolers that will be listening to this,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so short hop is one of the easiest ones. It's the one that right after it hits the ground, you're catching it. It's in your glove. That one typically, not all the time, but typically we're going downhill on that one. So I'm usually going to get a short hop. A long hop is a ball that's at its highest point or it's on its way down. So a lot of people hear long hop, they think it has to be high, like it's above my head or something. That's not the case. It just means it's no longer rising or is on its way down, right? And then the middle hop is the one we don't like. I don't care if you in T-ball or in the big leagues, that's where majority of our errors happen because that ball is still rising. It's past the short hop, but it hasn't reached its peak yet, so it's still rising when it gets to you. It's hard to read, it's hard to handle, is not fun. So I want to minimize as much as I can, the amount of short hops that I'm getting.
Okay. Okay. What about like I feel like one thing we see in like in the pros especially, and I feel like a lot of younger athletes they want to be able to do this type of thing is get fancy. Like you see like I mean again with the Mariners we have Crawford, but
Yeah.
where they're throwing like they're like catching and they're throwing on the from a side angle,
Yeah.
or they're throwing, like a lot of
Yeah.
athletes want to be able to do that. Like how
Hmm.
is that something that they should really be worrying about right now, or I guess yeah, where should they start to kind of work towards that?
Place that, yeah. After they've mastered the fundamentals.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff, to be honest with you, isn't necessarily things you practice. That varies from person to person. Like some guys just can't do that. And so it's like you kind of wasting time if you're practicing doing something that somebody does naturally. It is, certain things that you can work on to be able to put yourself in different positions and throw from different angles. But it's you got to understand too, where it's like that's the only possible play that they can make at that time. That's not their ideal play. Like I always say, good infielders make hard plays look easy. I mean, bad infielders make easy plays look hard. So it's like we're kind of working backwards when we're trying to look like that. And most of the time, it's a play that you don't need to do it on. So I would say, be obsessed with trying to make those hard plays look easy. And you do that by simplifying it. And it's like when we think about simplifying something, you think about getting back to the basics, get into the routine ball, get into the right hop. And those type of plays, they kind of just happen, to be honest with you.
Okay, okay. What about like one thing that I feel like is if there's this constant battle, and this is in every sport, between like what to train, how much to train, like speed. It's like, all right, you got to do at least twice a week, or strength, you got
Yeah.
to do it at least three times a week. Like as an infielder, I've kind of heard it said that sometimes or a lot of the time infielders are not as good of hitters because they have to spend so much time on defense versus an outfielder. What's your take on that?
It's definitely a delicate balance. I'm not gonna sit here and say I've totally figured it out. And because you got some guys that can just kind of jump out of bed and do it, and they don't have to spend as much time on it. And then other guys are totally opposite. So I think it's unique to the player. I think we would be kind of treading on dangerous ground if we try to say this is the formula for everybody. It's more about what your work ethic is, how you retain information, because there's also a such thing as overworking, where it's like I'm working so much and so hard that I'm just trying to get through it. I'm not being intentional. I'm wearing my body down. So that's a factor too. But everybody's different, so it's honestly hard to say. I will say one thing that I would like to see more is more kids playing more things, because a lot of the stuff that you learn, especially we started talking about like highlight plays and crazy athletic plays, they come from doing things in other sports. Where it's like if I'm playing flag football, I'm working on my agility, I'm working on my quickness. If I'm basketball, I'm working on my jumps. I'm working on all kind of different things that you might not get or you can't recreate in a training session. So it's like I hear a lot of kids that are like specializing at 13 and younger. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, bro, go play basketball, go play football, go do something, play soccer. Because it prepares you in ways to be a better ball player. It is going to come a point in time where it's like, okay, I need to spend more time because things are getting, more detailed, a little more complicated. But that time will come. But I hate seeing like youth kids that try to specialize in one thing and they're training year round. It's like, dude, it's too early for that. It's not. And getting into the training is a whole nother story. Like if you're actually getting the right training, but I would love to see kids like play more sports.
Dude, I totally agree, and it's always cool to me when I'm going and speaking to like a smaller town high school. Like I was in Forks, Washington this weekend, and that's Twilight Town, so that's
Yeah.
where we recorded. Very very small town, like I don't know, like probably like a mile at most from one side to the other. Like it's
Oh
very very small.
wow.
Yeah, like very small area. And I always ask them like, okay, what sports you guys play? And I like show of hands, and I'm like naming different sports, and like almost everyone in there is raising their hand for like every sport because it's like, what else are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
have a training facility that does baseball year round or
Right.
football or whatever. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the specialization is yeah, it limits your full athletic ability, I feel like.
Oh yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
I also I want to like talk about the mental side of fielding as well. I was gonna wait for this, but I feel like it's just a tricky one. And when we talk about fundamentals, I know this might tie into that. But how do you handle an athlete, a baseball or softball player who is maybe in a slump defensively? So, for example,
Hmm.
I don't know if you watched the Mariners playoffs, but Gino Suarez in a very, very key game had three really bad defensive mistakes, but then he recovered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you handle when especially in a game like hitting a lot of times it's like okay you only get your four shots, but if you're an infielder you might get multiple balls thrown at hit at you
Hmm.
in a shorter time frame.
Yeah, it's you definitely have to have short memory. Like you definitely have to have short memory. And that's easier said than done because nobody likes making errors. Like your best infielders are your best infielders because they hate making errors. It's one of those things that kind of irk you. But I always like my kids. I tell them like you're 0 for 0. Every ground ball, you're over. Oh, it's like you make a play, awesome. Put it in the tank. You did good, but you're over the next ball. Same thing if you miss one. I had a thing that I always tell myself, like if I made a mistake, I would look at the pitcher and it's like, roll me another one. I got the next one. It's like you have to like your self talk is so important in sports because it's like you hear your voice more than anybody else's. So if I'm sitting there like, you know, uh, sulking on this one mistake and I start to get fearful, and the one thing you do if you say please don't hit me the ball's coming. It's almost without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know why, this is the way it is, but it's like you can't fall into that space to where it's like now I'm fearful to make a play because the plays are going to come and it's going to be a similar, if not the same result. So short memory, and that takes time to develop. It's not just going, you can't just cut it on. And then positive self talk. Like some of your best ball players, like I wish they mic'd up guys more so you could hear like their self talk, where it's like they hold themselves accountable, but they don't down themselves. Where it's like, you know, you're all right. You're all right. Here we go. Pick it up. Pick it up. You got this. And it's huge. It plays a very big role. And I don't think a lot of young guys really understand that. Because I coached all the way up until last year, like summer, like higher level, like older guys. And you'll be amazed, like some of the stuff you hear them saying to themselves. I'm like, dude, like, I'm surprised you can still go out on the field after the talk you just had with yourself. But it's tough. It's tough to navigate if you don't have good self talk or if you're dwelling on mistakes. They're almost inevitable that they're going to happen again.
Yeah. Well, was there anything that you, as an athlete, especially, I mean, you had your 4 years in college as well, like anything that helped you in particular, or anything you've seen, like with any specific athletes that have really helped? I know you kind of mentioned just some of those that little bit of self talk, but anything that sticks out to you?
For me, I'm big in my faith. So it's like, understanding that one, it's a game. It's a kid's game. And we're blessed to play it for one. But it's like, when it gets really bad, and sometimes it does, like you gotta remember, you know, what is what does God say about you? Who does God say you are? It's like sometimes you have to go there to where it's like you get so down on yourself and you start, that self talk starts to get harmful. It's like, wait a minute. Like one, it's a game. Two, I got to go back. I need some reinforcements now. So for me, when I did get into those spaces where it's like I was really down on myself or I made a really big mistake in a really big moment, sometimes I would go to my word, and it kind of kept me up, kept me above the water until I was able to kind of dig myself out of that hole. So from like the mental space, for me, that was a huge one. Outside of the positive talk, outside of the short memory, because sometimes some mistakes happen that you just can't forget. Like I was talking to one of my guys about the Phillies game, that last hour where he just
Yeah.
like blitzed and just chucked it right to the backstop. I'm like, dude, like you gotta marinate that end of the season.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. Like it's not gonna be like, next day I'm good. Nah, you're gonna feel that one for a little bit. So it's at different times. It does require different things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just like with pitching. I mean, similar thing happened. Well, not similar, but where it was like one key moment that really iced the cake against the Mariners was that
Yeah.
allowed home run right there, and it was like,
Yep.
yeah, everyone
You
marinated
gotta go into the off season with that one.
on that.
That's tough.
I want to. So this is actually something I haven't asked before. So I've had a lot of mental performance coaches on here, but being that you're just talking about the mental side of things, and I know personally, and I'm sure you've experienced too, is it translates a lot into what you do even afterwards, like with you and your
Hmm.
business, and as a coach and stuff. And so how, because I feel like it's still one of those underrated things with athletes. They're
Yeah.
not training their mental side. Like, how do you see that valuable, number one as an athlete, but number two post athlete, like as a coach and whatnot?
Yeah, it's definitely big. I think like a lot of times when we talk about like the mental side of things, we talk about like negative things or positive self talk, but it's like just like from a training perspective, like if you're not engaged mentally, like if you're not engaged with what you're doing, what you're working on, intentional about it, it's you're missing out. You're not reaching your full potential. And so like for me, after, you know, playing ball, the mental side is still there. Where it's like I have to challenge myself with different kids because it's never, I try to tell myself it's never the kid. It's on me to get them to understand what it is that I'm trying to teach. And so it's like I could get frustrated. I could get this ain't working, this ain't, or it's like, okay, let me try this. Let me figure out this and not getting stuck on, or, if it's a situation where you have somebody that's not satisfied with your training. And it's like you got two options. You can take it personal or you could try to see things from their viewpoint and say, like, how can I get better in this area? So I still, to this day, I still use it. I would say I use it more with younger kids. They're a little more challenging. But it's definitely still there. And being able to kind of push through a wall when a kid isn't getting something or you're working on the same stuff like over and over and over. And there's some other variables that go into that, but it's, being able to kind of overcome those initial thoughts or those initial battles and just kind of keep chugging at it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think about it in business too, where it's like like you said, there's like the examples of yeah, you may have to deal with somebody that isn't happy with you or isn't happy with the
Yeah.
situation, or sometimes yeah, it might just be a random thing. Like this morning, like I felt so weirdly defeated. Like first thing in the morning, I woke up and I just felt like
Yeah.
defeated. And I was like, what the what the heck? Like,
Yeah.
you just never know when that negative stuff will just creep in. And so like
Oh
having
yeah.
that, like you said, having the positive self talk about having some of those habits and those things that can build you back up and kind of go
Hmm.
back to your roots. Like, for me also faith, like just leaning on that and
Yeah.
whatever helps you find that peace again.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Cause I mean, I always say life is gonna life.
Yep.
So it's one thing about playing sports at a high level. It's days you don't feel like doing it. It's days that it's like my body's shot, my mind is somewhere else. But it's like you still got to suit up and you got to figure out how to produce. And so that's life too. I have a family, a wife, and three little boys. It's days like you said. I wake up. I don't even feeling it today. I feel like I don't feel good. I'm defeated. I'm tired. It's like, man, you gotta figure it out, dude. You gotta keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep the wheels moving.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Um, Something else, I feel like a lot of athletes, they hear somebody who's played in college or had, different levels of success, and they're like, well, how did they do it? Or how did these things happen? But also they may see you and think that you always had things all together, And so like what are some things that you feel like even though you were very successful, high school, college athlete, like what are some things you feel like you really missed out on or you really wish you would have done differently looking back or wish you would have known better?
yeah. Probably for me, the biggest thing was like awareness of my body. Like I was the kid. I was gonna put in the work. I made the sacrifices. For me, that wasn't an issue. I just didn't have knowledge of the health side of things, like prehab and making sure your joints and your smaller muscle groups are good, your stabilization and stuff. So like what really pushed me out of the game was I tore my labrum 3 times. So I tore my left one, my glove arm twice, and then I tore my throwing arm once. And so when I tore my left one sophomore year of high school, and I didn't know, anything because the doctor told me I had like small sockets. So I was like, it was a blessing and a curse because I was like hypermobile. So it helped with like velocity and flexibility and stuff. But I didn't know anything about like those small muscle groups around your shoulder, rotator cuff that you have to build up. And like I would sublux my arm a lot. And I had a high pain tolerance, so I would sublux it. It'll hurt for a little bit, and then I'm like right back in there. But I didn't know anything about like building those small muscles back up, and so it just kept happening until I tore it. And once you tear it, you're susceptible to tear it again. And it wasn't until honestly I got to college Had an awesome trainer too. Gabe Casanova, he's at FIU still, so shout out to Gabe. Who really like helped me through that process because I played my whole freshman year with my throwing arm labrum was torn. I played my whole freshman year like that. It was torn in the front and the back. And so, but my rehab was nuts. Like every day, before practice, after practice, like that's just how bad I wanted to play. But if I would have had the knowledge that I got after tearing it before, I probably wouldn't have at torn it that many times at least. Because the one my throwing arm was that was a tough one, but my glove arm tearing that the second time I tore it in pro ball. After that, I was like, I'm not getting another surgery. Like that's it for me. I was 23. Would have been my third surgery, so it's like you kind of damaged goods at that point. So I would say just like knowledge of the health side of things in terms of like your body and preparing that just as much as the strength side.
So, dang, yeah. I mean, that's crazy. I didn't realize that with that you had three torn labrums. That's insane.
Yeah.
How for the listeners, for the middle school, high school athletes, like what could they do now to? And I know it'll be different depending on some of their,
hmm
pre-existing conditions or whatever. But
Yeah.
what would be some things that you would emphasize to them then on that?
Proper arm care. Proper arm care. And that stems all the way from, how you warm up, your band work. I would say, I'll take the leap to say 85 to 90% of kids, they have bands, they just don't use them properly. They use them to kind of get blood flowing. You just see them doing this and they do all that. Nothing's set, nothing's controlled, nothing's isolated. And so they're not building the muscles. They're getting blood flowing, but they're not doing anything to actually help their arm care and their the structure in their arm and everything. So I would say an easy one is proper band and rotator cuff work. After that is intentionality with how you throw. Are your mechanics good? Are you intentional with how you warm up? Do you have a throwing routine? What's your off season work look like? It's for arm stuff. It's not a whole lot of things done in the weight room that's gonna help you. That's weight room is more of your bigger muscle groups. Some stability stuff, but the arm stuff that's before after practice, like just taking care of your arm, and then how you recover. I know it's a lot of science out there, and we grew up. Oh, you're running, you're icing. Now it's you got cryo. You shouldn't ice. You shouldn't run poles. So it's whatever works. You got to figure out what that is for you, and be consistent with it. For sure, be consistent with it.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that from the nutrition and the sleep are big parts of recovery too. So I actually
hmm
spoke to sports medicine classes on Monday, and those were the big emphasis when we talk about injury prevention, but even recovery from
Yeah,
injury is the
yeah,
nutrition.
that is big.
Yeah. Emphasizing, I mean, number one, eating enough. Like that's just the first baseline step. If you're not eating enough, you're more prone to injury.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then number two, but eating enough of the right stuff. Because if you just eat a bunch of fast
right.
food, that's not great either. Uh,
Yeah.
but sleep though that's one that I think is a really underrated, especially in teenagers. And when we
hmm
look at like all of the studies, like they've done a lot of studies in particularly like military populations and shown like okay, you get 6 hours of sleep, this is like level of risk of injury versus like eight
hmm
hours 7 hours, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, huge. um what let's see, what are some other aside from the like the prehab or just like taking care of the arm in that way, what are some other key things that you really think that especially nowadays that athletes really need, or infielders especially really need to lock in on more?
Um, I would say like your load, like your load and how much you're playing, how much you're throwing. It's a lot of guys, because I feel like Otani has solidified a two-way player, which is awesome, but most guys aren't preparing their body to do both. And so it's you got a kid that's trying to go out and throw 85 to 100 pitches, and then they're playing short the next game. And then they're playing, older guys, you're playing pretty much the entire summer every single day. So it's, understanding that, yeah, you do have to get used to the load of playing, and that's just the nature of, travel ball now. But like understanding your body from a standpoint of like when you need to shut it down, when you need to lower your pitch count, maybe playing second instead of shorter throw, but just like I would say load management.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it all the time with pitchers. I was just having recent conversations with some pitching coaches, and they were calling out certain organizations, and I won't name names, but certain pitching
There's a
organizations
bunch
or
of them
team,
out there.
yeah, are like, oh, why does this team have so many injuries, huh?
Yep. It's bad, man. It's
Yeah,
really bad. It's really
but
bad.
I like that you call out though the fielding too, because I mean they do also, especially shortstops. They're throwing quite a
Hmm.
bit. They're in that position, and yeah, and I mean it's more and more common. I was just talking to a parent last night where he's like, "Oh yeah, my kid plays all year round," and I was like,
Some nuts.
I may not be a pitcher, but still, you never, yeah.
Right. It's not healthy.
When we think about like drills for athletes, like what would be some key drills that you could see that would help any middle school, high school athlete when it comes to infielding?
Oof, that's a lot. I would definitely say like isolating hands. So like I call them knee picks. So getting on both knees, working on your forehand, your backhand, even, two-hand progression. But like understanding like, okay, how do I efficiently and effectively pick a ball? And once I do know how, is repeating it, trying to build the repetitiveness, the quote unquote muscle memory, and just being consistent. And then you can kind of change that element to where it's like use a tennis ball. Tennis balls bounce different, they're lighter. Use a baseball, use a lacrosse ball, and just getting used to like seeing the hop where it's like, okay, I might start off really close to the wall. If I got a bounce back net, I might back up. I might try to make the hop higher or lower or more straight. So that's all things you can do by yourself too. So everybody can do those. Just I always say get a ball in the wall. You can kind of get it going with that. Um, on top of that, I would say posture. So like learning, what is the proper field and posture look like? Can I get into it? Am I stable enough to get into it? Are my legs weak? Am I having a hard time with it? Do I have balance? So I would say it's a handful of things, but one of the most common things is probably your knee picks, and then after that, that's directly transferable is like your timing, like working on get somebody to roll you a ball. And like timing, when I talk about timing, I'm specifically talking about your left foot. So if you're left-handed, it's your right foot. But if your if your left foot hits the ground right before you make contact with the ball, you have good timing. If your entire foot gets into the ground before the ball gets to you, you're early. If no part of your foot is on the ground when you catch the ball, you're slightly late. So getting somebody to roll you a ball and seeing like, can I pause at contact with my toe still up? So that's another one that's pretty easy and but it's really effective if you're working on it.
Yeah. One, I feel like the nice thing with that versus like say, when you're practicing hitting is like you could have anybody, like you could probably even have your mom throw you. Like
Hmm.
they don't have to be
Yeah.
throwing, hard balls at you to be able to do that. You can still get some,
Right.
yeah, good reps.
Right.
Yeah. One last question. I wanna kind of ask a unique question is if you were looking at three pro athletes, either like recently former or current, specifically infielders, what are three of them that you would recommend infielders follow and study? And maybe
Oh,
something
that's a good one.
specific to study.
That's a good one. Lindor is definitely high on that list. Lindor, arguably, is probably one of the best shortstops to play the game. Just everything that he does, like he's versatile. If you ask most guys, even guys that play, and say who's the smoothest infielder, and smooth can be a big blanket statement because we know what something looks like, but we don't know how to break it down. And it's Lindor. But he does things that you can build in a way to where it's like he's so big on fundamentals and being consistent that it's like other kids can do. They might not do it the way that he does it, but they can create consistency the way that he does. His timing is great. He knows when to use two hands, when to use one. He takes great angles. He's very rarely rushed. So I would say he's top on that list. Um, Another guy I would say study is just because of the nature of like how he plays. Is even though he's not a shortstop anymore, Carlos Correa.
Mhm.
So he's a big one hand guy. And it's not about what's right or wrong, but it's like what's effective. He's tall. He's like 6'4", and so it's him getting down and fielding with two hands a little more difficult than it might be for Lindor, who's 5'11", 6 foot. But he's perfected playing with one hand. And I love unique guys. I love guys who understand who they are as a player, and they maximize it. They reach their full potential. So just from the standpoint of him being uh, a taller guy, longer guy, and him having to do things different. I love that. I think it's a lot of guys that can learn from that. And it also shows you, like, since he got in the league, they were telling him he was going to have to move to third because he was too big. He didn't move well. He's not the fastest. And this is the first year after almost 10 years that he's moved to third base. And so he did it for a long time, and it's, for a reason. Third, just because it's one of my favorite shortstops of all time is Jeter.
Oh,
Like
man.
Jeter got the job done, man. He got the job done. So he wasn't your most athletic guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't, he didn't have the best arm. He had a strong arm. And he wasn't, the best in terms of like attributes and physical attributes, but he was probably one of the most consistent guys. Like you knew what you were going to get. Didn't matter the pressure of the situation, but he also had to overcome fear and doubt. Like when he first got drafted, it was a couple of seasons he had like 50 plus errors, and like to the point to where he was like, "Don't hit me the ball." And so he had to overcome that. So like looking at, okay, like what did he focus on? Like how does he do things? How does he move? Like what works for him? He's a guy that had to overcome, that mental space and that struggle. And he worked his butt off. I when I was in college, I was fielding with a guy that was in AAA with the Yankees. And he would see him in spring training and stuff like that. And one thing he told me that just blew my mind. This was like year what 18 for Jeter, and he said every year he gets to spring training a month before everybody else, and they said he worked like he was trying to make the team. Like you talking about the captain, like he could retire whenever he wanted to. It was his spot. It was solidified, and he worked harder than everybody. Like he was trying to make the team every single year. So it's just like the kind of ball player and the kind of commitment and sacrifice that takes. I think that's you can't get too much better than that.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, Jeter's not, Mariners fan don't love Jeter, but that's the thing. There's always those players that you love to hate, but at the same time you have to respect what they do. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
LeBron.
oh
Like I
yeah,
don't love
yep.
LeBron, but I respect what he does.
100%, right there with you,
Yeah.
right there with you.
Awesome, sweet. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on, Julius. You a lot of good stuff, and for infielders, like it's not just what we talked about today, but even looking at go and follow Julius. So, like, speaking of like, what's the easiest way to check out what you're doing?
I would definitely say Instagram. So Instagram is probably my most active platform. I'm working on getting more active on YouTube right now, but my Instagram, which is ground underscore up underscore baseball, you can catch me on there. Feel free to reach out. I do respond to messages. If you have questions, definitely reach out and I'll get back with you.
Yeah, and I'll drop all of that's in the caption too. So definitely check that out. Uh, do you do online stuff just so they know?
I do. I actually just started. I'm on a platform that's called. It used to originally was called Seams Up, but now it's called Coachly. So I do that. I do some remote programs. I keep it kind of smaller. Like I don't take on a huge load because it it requires a lot of commitment. And I'm not a fan of people wasting their money, wasting their time. So it's like it's a select few that I'll choose for that. But I do have a remote program that I offer.
Okay, awesome. Just checking. Yeah, so definitely check him out in general. Check out his socials, especially Instagram. But yeah, Julius, I really appreciate you hopping on and unpacking some of those fun questions.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. And athletes, again, you guys got things to work on. You guys got things that you can start taking action on. Remember, like that's how you grow is take action. So don't just listen to this and walk away. Like actually pick out something
Oh
you're
yeah.
gonna do. And as always, keep striving for greatness.